Hey guys, and welcome back to Betwixt the Books. It's Michaela here. Gretchen wasn't able to do a video this week, and I actually managed to read the last book that I needed to read for this video, so I am here this week to talk to you guys and do the second part of my Best Books of Horror 2024 according to the Goodreads Choice Awards video. Last time I did 5 books from the men who were selected in the top 20 books of 2024. This time I am going to do the women. I wanted to make sure that I was representing both groups, and also I feel like there was like way more diversity in the women that were selected for the horror prize last year, and so I picked a bunch of people from a bunch of different places to talk about today. I did want to get this video out before the 2025 Goodreads Choice Awards were announced, and I didn't quite do that because those were announced last week, and I'm talking about it this week. If you want to know why I was dragging my feet, because I was almost done, I had one book left, I would have had it done, but wait until the end of the video, because the very last book that I read, I have thoughts. Just like last time, I'm going to go through these not by like the order they were in the Goodreads Choice Awards, but by the order that I read them, starting with the oldest, the one that I read the longest ago, and that is What Feasts at Night by T. Kingfisher. This is the second book in the Sworn Soldier series. The first book in that series is What Moves the Dead, which Gretchen and I both reviewed together, and there's a video on the channel that you can go and watch. We had thought about reviewing this one together. I think we both had arcs at one point, but it just never ended up working out, I think, with Gretchen's schedule and everything that was going on. So I still have a copy of it because we both enjoyed the first one so much, and it gave me the opportunity when I was doing this video to pick it up and read it. In this one, Alex, the protagonist from the first book, goes back home after all of the events that happened at the Usher estate, to find that all of their employees of their own estate have either died or quit, except for like a handful. Part of that is because of a superstition, and that they think the estate is haunted by this ghost creature that suffocates people at night. Alex at first doesn't believe that that's what is going on, is trying to figure out what else is going on, until the like one employee that is still there starts suffering from symptoms that seem very familiar and very similar to that haunting creature that was mentioned at the beginning of it. It's a novella. I don't want to say much more than that. I wound up giving it 4.25 stars. Out of all of the ones that I read for this video, this was the highest score that I gave. I definitely preferred the first book in the series, but I liked this one as well. T. Kingfisher does a really good job of creating atmosphere and interesting characters, and sort of the motivations of all of the different characters, adding a layer to what is ostensibly just a supernatural thriller, like a haunting, a gothic haunting. You create a new layer with the interpersonal stuff that's going on in these, which is really hard to do in something so short. So I enjoyed it very much. I picked up the new one that just came out this past fall. I haven't had a chance to read that one yet, but I definitely will keep going with the series moving forward. The next book that I read was A Sunny Place for Shady People by Mariana Enriquez. This is the only translated text in the entire group of 20, so I definitely wanted to pick it up. It's a collection of short stories. The author is Argentinian, so a lot of them take place there in Argentina. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I think I read this either at the very beginning of September or at the end of August. It has been a little bit of time, and aside from the 2 stories in there that I rated quite highly, most of the rest of them have more or less just like gone. I couldn't tell you the plot of most of those. The 2 that I enjoyed the most, there's one where a woman has sort of like a genetic condition or inherited through her family where her features slowly are disappearing, so she's losing like there's like an episode of Fringe where everybody's skin like grows over their mouth and nose and eyes, and they just become a featureless blob and die that way. And this woman is experiencing something very similar to this and sort of freaking out about it. That one was like very creepy body horror. I loved that story. And then there was a second story that involved possibly a supernatural element where a young girl whose cousin and aunt and uncle come back to Argentina, having been living in the United States, and despite being very rich compared to their Argentinian relatives, they are struggling because their daughter is overweight and, in their mind, suffering from delusions because she says that she is having sexual relationships with ghosts. The point of view character here doesn't know whether or not it's like she's crazy and making it up, like it's a schizophrenia thing, or if she is actually having sex with ghosts. She finds an online message board of other people who also say they experience this, and then to save her cousin from essentially getting institutionalized in Argentina and sort of like locked away as like the crazy cousin as her parents go back to America without her, she tries to get this cousin to the people from that like message group, and whether or not they actually are who they say they are, or if it is a safe place for her cousin to be, is not answered in that story, and is sort of the question of it, of like what's best for people, and how we treat quote-unquote undesirables in that way in their society, in our society. I really enjoyed that story as well, but because the rest of them were kind of meh for me, there wasn't a whole lot going on that like really stuck out to me, and that feeling has gotten worse over time because now I couldn't even tell you what the plot of most of those stories are. I only gave it 3 stars overall. The next book that I read was Diavola by Jennifer Thorne. This is a modern gothic haunting story. I ended up giving this one 3.75. It was the one that I liked the most after T. Kingfisher's book. I was really interested to see what a modern gothic story, like traditional gothic, not a southern gothic, because there's plenty of modern southern gothics, but this is like a traditional like European style gothic story, looked like. A family goes to Italy. They stay in a huge castle estate. They are warned by the person who owns the estate not to open a specific door to the tower on the property. There's some weird events that go on. Our protagonist winds up opening that door, and weird supernatural occurrences start happening. She, on top of that, is sort of the black sheep of the family. Every single problem that happens in the family, they all seem to sort of attribute to her, and that it's her fault that this is going on. So there is this dual narrative of the supernatural things that are making things worse and sort of exacerbating this already contentious relationship that she has with all of her family. And the ghost follows her back home once she leaves. And the things that she has to do in order to rid herself both of the actual haunting, the supernatural haunting that's going on, and the haunting of the guilt and blame that she has for herself and what goes on in her family, is an interesting one. I will say that it took me a long while to get into this one. It was like much slower at the beginning than it wound up being towards the end. I vastly preferred the ending of the story. It wasn't until I realized that what the story was talking about in terms of the themes of being a black sheep and being a scapegoat for a family, that I realized why all of the events that were happening in the earlier part of the novel were being brought forward. When I was in those earlier parts of the novel, I was like, why does everybody hate her? Like, I'm so confused. Even her twin brother seems to resent her for some reason. And then once I realized what that family dynamic was and that was actually the point of the book, it got a lot better for me. So between this one and What Feast at Night, those are my 2 ones that I definitely recommend that people pick up. If it's something that you're interested in, definitely something worth picking up, even getting a physical copy if you don't have one. The next book that I read was This Cursed House by Sandeen. This was the only book, I think, on the list by a black author, or at least a black woman. There might have been a black man on the list as well, but this was, it kind of felt like the token black author getting thrown into the ring. Not that this wasn't a good choice, but just something that I noticed, and traditionally of the Goodreads Choice Awards, is that it's very white dominant. And so you might see an Asian author, a Latina author, an Indigenous author on the list, but there's not a wide variety there, and this is something that is being talked about with the 2025 awards as well. Less so with horror this year. Horror this year actually has a lot of variety, but overall, as a award, it's a critique of them. This Cursed House is a Southern Gothic book, so this is more American Gothic style. A young woman leaves her life in Chicago in the 1960s, where she was a tutor. She had a falling out with her boyfriend, who got another woman pregnant, and she takes a job for a family down south, where she was initially from, to be a tutor for their kids. As she comes to town, she finds out that they actually don't need her as a tutor and that they need her to help break a familial curse. None of the members of the family in this house are able to leave the property, and every 7 years, like clockwork, one of them dies. So she is simultaneously unraveling her relationship with this family and trying to figure out, like, who placed this curse and how to free them from it, as well as exploring the fact that that family is actually a black family who has been white passing, and their history of owning slaves themselves previously. While the book itself takes place in 1960s in the South, there's still segregation going on, and that family, despite saying that they are proud to be Black Americans, seems to be very focused on maintaining social clout and social power by maintaining white passing privilege within the family line, including but not limited to an inordinate amount of incest. So if you don't like incest, this one isn't one to pick up. I do think that it was an interesting storyline. I believe this is a debut novel, and while the author has like a good sentence level writing style, there were some structural things that sort of threw me off, and I wound up only giving it 3 stars. Perfectly fine. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't my favorite of the bunch by far. Definitely not something that I would recommend you not picking up, but I definitely liked some of the other books on this list more than this one. Glad that I picked it up and read it. I may not have otherwise if I hadn't been doing this video, so glad that I picked it up and put it on my radar, but yeah, it was not my favorite out of the bunch. I am interested to possibly pick up some more by Sandeen in the future, though. And then to wrap this all up, the last book that I wound up picking up was actually the book that I owned the longest. I picked it up in hardcover right when it came out, and that is The Eyes Are the Best Part by Monika Kim. And unfortunately for me, this was my least favorite of the bunch, despite being one of the higher ranked in the Goodreads Choice Awards for the year. This might just be a me problem. The Eyes Are the Best Part follows Ji-won, whose father has recently left her mother. She is a new college student, and she is struggling under the weight of now being the oldest child, her mother's depression when it comes to her father having left, her father leaving with no contact to anyone in the family at all, and doing college for the first time. She, around this time, winds up having a meal with her family where she eats a fish eyeball, which she had never eaten before, which is considered sort of like a delicacy, one of the more sought after parts of the fish in Korean culture, and forms an unhealthy obsession with eyeballs. As some other characters start being introduced to their family and the pressures that are put onto them from that, she then becomes obsessed with eating their eyeballs to the point of possibly killing and consuming the eyeballs of several characters later in this book. So you're watching an unhinged character unravel. A lot of this book focuses around the issues of the sexualization of young Asian women, which I totally understand and I get, and sort of the grossness of men in general, but specifically men towards young Asian women. And I respect what it was trying to do. I do think that the ending I had some questions with, and the writing style didn't work for me. It was written in a very flat, sort of here's the facts tone, which for a sociopathic character that winds up being a serial killer, like I understand why that choice may have been made, but it made it really difficult for me to care about the character at all. And not that you need to care about all of your characters. That on top of some of the questions that I had about like why certain choices were made, why certain scenes were included in this, left me sort of with a bad taste in my mouth. most of the reviews of this are highly positive, and to me they seem to come down to good for her. And I think the more that I read stories like this, where they are feminist, but the feminist take is look at this awful man who's doing horrible things, so that when the female character does horrible things to him in return, you feel vindicated and like proud of her, and it makes you feel good that you're seeing somebody who's awful suffer the consequences of their actions. And when that comes to talking about something being written in a feminist lens, the take on that, is that what we're trying to do? We're trying to take the normal hierarchy and just supplant men with women and change it that way. I don't enjoy that as a narrative, I guess. I'm not an angry person. I don't want to seek justice or vengeance or whatever it is. So I didn't super love that. And then the way that it ended, I don't want to spoil it. It didn't feel good. It didn't feel satisfying as an ending. So it only got 2 stars from me, despite being more highly rated and higher up on the list, and also being one that I was really excited about. Again, this was a debut, so there's a chance that, you know, this writer does better going forward. There were some things that were, like, really well done, and other things that just weren't for me. So, like, this one just might not be to my taste. It might not be for me, but it clearly is for a lot of other people, and I'm glad that they enjoyed it. And that is all 5 of the books that I read for this video. So now I have read 10 of the best books of last year across 2 videos. If you didn't see that original video, I welcome you to go and watch that. I read a lot of the like top highly rated books in that one, including the winner and the runner-up. And I'm debating whether to do something similar with 2025. I have read a couple of the books on the Goodreads Choice Awards list for horror for this year, but I think right now my brain needs a break from horror. Next week, I'm going to check in on my reading challenges, because we're coming up to just having the end of the year left, just December, to complete my reading challenges for the year. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what my, like, possible TBR is for the rest of the year to finish up my challenges. And I think I avoided horror altogether on that list because I've just been reading so many of them all in a row. But first, coming up just on Friday, we have a new reading roundtable coming out for you, celebrating Indigenous History Month. So please look forward to that. And I'm sure Gretchen will be back soon with something romance or history based if that's more to your taste. I will see you guys when I see you guys. I'll talk to you then. Bye.